Nakita, where was your baby at? Where did your mother put your baby?
She buried him in the backyard.
At one point in time, she took you out there and showed you where he was buried, did she not?
When I came back in her custody that day, she took me in the backyard and said, "Can you see anything?" And when I said no, I mean, it just looked like the backyard to me. She said, "Well, your baby's buried out there."
Just like that?
Mm-hmm.
What did she say to you since? I mean, what did she... You went to trial, you didn't have to talk to her, but you had to look at her in the courtroom. Did you not? Did she say anything to you? Did she mouth anything? Has she said anything to you?
She just smiled at me when I glanced at her when I was on the stand.
I know this has been a hard transition for you, but now you're living with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
You're back in school.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell, what's your grade point average right now? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Last time I checked, it was like almost a 4.0.
Almost a 4.0.
Almost.
Almost. But you went from a 4.0 student to not going to school to now, after all of this, back to 4.0. You have a lot to be proud of. You know that. Well, please welcome Nakita's father, Larry, to the show. Welcome in. How are you doing? Good, sir. Nice to meet you. Have a seat. Talk to us for a second. You know, this is the part of the story that I just don't understand. I know from the time that you divorced her mom, she was about 2, from 2 to 10, your children lived with your ex.
Right.
In what they both described as just absolutely horrific conditions.
Before they came to Pa's house, they were briefed what not to say, what not to talk about. And they were pretty good at not giving me any information about what circumstances they were living.
So you didn't find out really what was going on at the house until your son came home, correct?
Right. I would get little bits of information because I have relatives in the general area where Julie, her mother, was living. And I would get a little bit of information from one person or another, like when the house caught on fire. Okay, I read about it in the local paper that the house had caught on fire. Of course, without telephone, you know, if they don't have electricity, they certainly didn't have a telephone contact. So the only contact I would have would be call the nursing home and talk to her directly. And of course, she was not going to tell me anything.
So it wasn't until Joel, your son, comes home that you found out what living conditions were like. Right. And from that point forward, you were making attempts at getting custody of your daughter, were you not?
Yes. We started off by getting the child protection agencies involved, Department of Human Resources in Arkansas, filing complaints with them.
And that's part of the process as the reason why you kept going to court and having to go in and see people, correct? Now, at the same time that this is happening, your mom is telling you that your dad's doing this because he's an evil man. Go ahead.
I was the evil person that was getting Department of Human Resources causing them so many problems. And that's what she was telling Nakita.
Well, you were just trying
if it wasn't for your dad stirring up so much trouble, we wouldn't be having to drag you into court, et cetera, et cetera. And
how did you find out that your baby, your 13-year-old daughter, number one, was pregnant? And you didn't know anything about the pregnancy at all, did you?
No, the first I heard was when the authorities called me and said, "We've taken Nakita out of the home for a while. She has had a miscarriage. She's in the hospital up there now." I asked about coming to see them. They said, no, it wouldn't be good for me to come up there right now because Nakita was very hostile towards the idea of seeing me, that they were going to put her in a foster home, and then we'd arrange for me to come see her then. That was never done. I never saw her during the time that she was in the foster home. And about 30 days later, they reviewed, the local judge that reviewing the case, reviewed the case and made the decision to put her back in Julie's custody. And I wrote letters, I hired an attorney, I screamed and yelled, trying to get someone to see that this situation was more than was being presented right in the courtroom.
And nobody listened. It wasn't until Nakita told the rest of her story that people finally listened to her.
Exactly. If the system had been protecting her, it wouldn't have had to go that far.
Nakita, what do you think of Dad now?
I love him.
You know what, let's take a break, because I want to know, how did the two of you rebuild that? Because she had 9 straight years, 8 straight years of lies about how evil a human being you were.
A lot of brainwashing went on.
A lot of brainwashing. Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this.